Now tell us a little about Dominion. Dominion is a company that makes voting machines and voting calculation machines.
That's correct. They've got full end-to-end election, equipment and software.
And the actual software in the Dominion machine, is that Dominion software or is it someone else's?
Dominion is more of a hybrid. Over the years, they've acquired other voting companies, Sequoia and Premier. Sequoia was spun off of SGO, and Premier was spun off of Diebold as a result of the antitrust lawsuit.
Sequoia is the company that was involved in the very serious miscalculation of the Chicago vote in 2007, wasn't it?
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
And they were using Smartmatic software, right?
Correct. And the software, the licensing agreements are pretty well. It's a good spider chart for all of these companies. They all share a common DNA in the software code.
And that company, Smartmatic, their roots are in Venezuela, isn't that right?
Yes, sir. Hugo Chavez was one of the founders, and invested, I think, 28% ownership in the initial setup of the SGO election systems.
And they have been involved in several South American elections that were fixed, altered.
Argentina, Bolivia, Singapore, Venezuela, Italy, several.
And just to simplify things, and we can make this available to you, we have several witnesses that go back to that period of time who were involved in the vote fixing, who have looked at the vote pattern in Arizona and elsewhere and said that the pattern matches the way in which Dominion and Smartmatic, companies like that, fix votes. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And what did you, well, let me ask you this other question. One of the former officials of the United States government, a gentleman named Chris Krebs, the former DHS official, shortly after the election, he made an announcement that many of these people refusing to take a look at any evidence are relying on. What did he say?
Mr. Krebs was the director of CISA at DHS, and he basically said that this election was the most secure in history.
The most what?
Most secure.
The most secure in history.
And partially that was because the states do an excellent job of validating voter rolls, and that this equipment is not connected to the internet. That was in his.
He said this equipment, which was largely Dominion and several others, is not connected to the internet. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, is Dominion on his council?
Dominion was on Mr. Krebs' Election Security Advisory Council.
And is there, and we'll get to it with the witnesses, is there substantial evidence, not only here in Arizona, but in other states like what we presented in Pennsylvania, that Dominion was in fact connected to the internet?
Are you referring to information other than the user's manual?
Well, let's go back to the user's manual. Tell them about the user's manual.
The Dominion Suite user's manual is about 1.5 inches thick. And my team went back to the user's manual and looked at all the instances where in the user's manual it tells operators to connect the Ethernet cords to the router, and it is the systems are connected to the internet.
And then what evidence do you have that there actually was connection to the internet?
Our teams looked at spider graphs of the Dominion network on election day and showed the increased web traffic, internet traffic on election day for Dominion servers.
So on election day, Dominion was communicating by internet?
Correct.
Contrary to what Mr. Krebs said or thought?
That is correct. My background in the military, I started off my career as an air cavalry officer, flying helicopters, counter reconnaissance. Moved later into information warfare as an information operations officer, running psychological operations, computer network operations, deception, operation security, and electronic warfare, special electronic warfare. And our team has been researching this specific issue since August of this year. We are working with another team that's been intently working on this voting machine manipulation for about 2 years when it became apparent in the Ted Cruz and Beto race in 2018, as well as the Kentucky governor's race with Matt Bevins. We saw significant anomalies in those races, and that's kind of the experience or our background working with this system. And I would tell you, as an unconventional warfare information operations, information warfare specialist, the American populace is facing an unconventional warfare scenario. This is information warfare. The voting systems in the U.S. and Arizona, Dominion, and several of the other machines were built to be manipulated. And as the mayor said, they've been used in elections around the world with questionable results. And we believe that these same questionable results are present in this election. Again, my background as an information warfare officer is how to get in and corrupt these machines to conduct strategic influence operations. How do I get the enemy or a targeted population in a foreign country to think and act a certain way? These machines have multiple points of injection that are vulnerable, everywhere from the server level, where passwords, accesses are posted for the dark web for any hacker to get in and access them. And what they can do at the far right limit is download CSV files or like an Excel spreadsheet, change the columns, and re-upload them. And that can be done at the server level. At the operator level, if there's software, it can be corrupted. It can be manipulated with a device that is as small and as simple as a USB device, which these machines are booted up and run off of. So the little bit of history, and I can show you some charts on the DNA of these machines. But the common software goes back to SGO Smartmatic. As Mayor mentioned, they sold Sequoia voting systems to Dominion in 2010, and then Diebold spun off the Premier election system to Dominion as a result of the antitrust concerns. I believe that was also in 2010. So the bottom line is that these systems all have similar code and similar functions, and it's displayed in their operator's manual. So, I know it's kind of been, in the press, it's kind of been poo-pooed that this doesn't go back to Hugo Chavez. But I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge, speaking with two of Hugo Chavez's family members, that in the Maduro election, when the populist uprising threatened Venezuela's totalitarian leadership, that Hugo Chavez's family members said that don't worry, that it's guaranteed that their father invested the money to build the SGO voting machine system. So, in a nutshell, these systems are not what you've been told, if you've been told anything. They are connected to the internet. There is no transparency of how the voter information is processed, moved, and stored. And as a matter of fact, these companies have refused to allow any type of inspection into their code, and they always decry, it's our IP, it's IP protection. But with the declaration, I believe, with Jay Johnson, was our Secretary of Homeland Security, he declared that the national election system was national critical infrastructure. So there is, I think, reason for us to understand the code and how these machines function and how they use our votes and process votes. The voting record is able to be modified, deleted, adjusted by administrators or outside threats, and those are also explained in the user's manual. Operators can assign votes for write-in votes, blank or error ballots in large numbers. So all of these votes, they could get put into a batch file, and then the administrator of that voting or tabulation system can say, okay, there's 8,000 votes in this batch file, or there's 5,000 votes in this batch file, and they can say, well, I think, this batch, we'll just make this go to this candidate, and they have that they have that authority in the user's manual to do that. Our team is not the only team that's working on this. There are literally hundreds of other small cyber teams that have weighed in on this. There are tons of statisticians. You'll hear from some of your Arizona citizens today, but we've been working in several states looking at these anomalies. But it's not a secret. DEF CON last year, I think the hacking teams broke in and manipulated these machines in under 2 minutes. So it can be done. It's easy, and there's very little security. So they can be hacked to manipulate votes. One of our white hat hackers discovered a malware on the server that's called the QSnatch that basically records login credentials and passwords. So if someone in Philadelphia, or someone in Maricopa County, or someone in Antrim, Michigan logged in, that malware will grab their username and password. And so you can log in. If you got access to the backside of that malware, you can log in wherever you are in the world to Maricopa County to manipulate. There's multiple ways.
Just interrupt you for a second.
Yes, sir.
So we get the point of this clear. You actually examined one of the machines, and you were actually able to see very, very clear changes in vote in the machine, correct?
Correct, in Michigan.
And it was down ballot changes. How many?
Correct. So the down ballot there were changes in the election day vote on 11/3 to the recount vote on 11/6. Say, for example, the school board, one lady on the election day received 519 votes, and this was a very small precinct. And the post recount, they went from 592 to 852. The total votes went from 1068 to 1810, and the write-in vote jumped from 24 to 112. There was another proposition on a state proposal that jumped significantly from 700 votes on election day up to 1083 on the recount. So there are a lot of variabilities, and what we believe this is due to is the USB drive that was used in the election day versus the post-election recount.
Well, this proposition, when I see